We now move on to the very small part left out of the reproduction in plants in biology in standard 8th, that is biology, that is reproduction in plants. Now, up till now we already studied the complete part of the reproduction plants, that was asexual method, which was dependent on the different kinds of modified roots, stems, and then artificial things like grafting, cutting, layering, and all. We also saw that how the sexual reproduction takes place in plants, that is about the flower. We learned about the flower, and we also saw that how the self-pollination takes place and how the cross-pollination takes place, and cross-pollination taking place by the different medium or the different kinds of agents which are called with the insect, water, and air. And we now what we will understand that what exactly happens after pollination, and the process which is going to take place after pollination is called as fertilization. So we have seen up till now that we had this particular kind of female part of the flower, that is the ovary. So this was the, we'll just take this much part, okay. This was like this, we'll take it like only this much. So this is the ovary, wherein there are these ovules, the eggs. This is the style, and then this is the stigma. So we had seen up till now that this was the female reproductive part, that is the ovary, style, and stigma. Ovary contains the egg, which are nothing but the eggs. So that is the ovules. Okay. So now we consider that the fertilization of this particular flower has taken place. So what do you mean by that? That there has been a pollen grain which has come to the stigma, whether it is self-pollination or whether it is by a particular insect getting it, or it's by wind or by water. Not to consider that, just a simple thing is that a proper pollen grain which is of the same species has come and landed up onto the stigma of this particular flower. Okay, when this pollen grain and the stigma both are of the same species, only then this particular pollen grain is accepted by the stigma. So unless and until it is not accepted, there would not be any further process taking place. If it is seen that they are of the same species, then this particular pollen grain is going to absorb moisture from the stigma, and it is going to start generating a small tube over here. So what will happen is it is going to form a tube like this. So it is going to form a tube like this, right from the top into the style, and it will be reaching up to the ovule. Okay, so from here a tube is coming from the pollen grain. There will be a generation of a tube, and this tube is called as pollen tube. So there will be a pollen tube which will be coming up from this point and entering inside the style and going into the ovary. Now from this tube passes the male gamete. So the male gamete, you can say the sperm cell, is going to travel from this tube. Okay, the sperm cell was present in the pollen grain. So the pollen grain had got two kinds of cells inside it. One was the tube nucleus, which is generating the tube inside. There's a tube nucleus generating the tube inside, and the other one is the male nucleus, or the sex nucleus, sex cell. The sex cell is the sperm gamete, the male gamete, that is going to pass through this tube and enter into the ovule. So when it enters into the ovule, the male gamete, that is, suppose we had just make it a bit bigger. So the male gamete is going to fuse with the female. So there is a female gamete here, so the egg cell over here, and the male gamete over here. They are going to fuse together to form the zygote. So what you form over here will be the formation of a zygote. The zygote is nothing but the formation of the seed. Okay, the baby plant which is going to be there inside the seed, that is the first formation of the fusion of the male and the female gamete of the flower. So the male and the female gamete of flower are going to fuse together, and the fusion of the male and the female gamete over here is called as fertilization. So the fusion of the sex cells to produce the zygote is called as fertilization. Right? So we'll just read through this thing, that fertilization, fusion of male and female sex cells. After reaching the stigma of the flower of the same kind of plant, the pollen grain absorbs moisture from stigma surface and begins to grow out a tube. This tube is called as the pollen tube. So this blue colored thing, what I showed you here, is the pollen tube, which is going to be generated by the pollen grain as soon as it reaches the right stigma. The pollen tube lengthens through the style and enters the ovule in the ovary. It enters into the ovule which is present in the ovary. There it releases the male cell which fuses with the female cell. So and reaching this thing, the male cell which was present in the pollen grain, it is made to go over there and it is released inside the ovule. So that in that ovule they are releasing that particular male cell. So it's male cell which fuses with the female cell to produce a zygote. The fusion of these sex cells to produce a zygote is called as fertilization. So fertilization is the process of fusion of the male and the female gamete inside the plant. The ovule containing the fertilized cell develops into a seed. So this particular ovule, later on, what will going to happen? The whole flower is going to wither off. Its petals, its carpels, everything is going to get withered off. What is going to remain are these ovules. Now these ovules are now fertilized eggs or the fertilized seeds, and so these seeds need protection. So for the protection purpose, these seeds are going to have a covering on top of it, which is nothing but the original ovary, and then there will be a flashy thing on top of it to protect the seed completely, and hence it is formation of the fruit. So you see, the ovule containing the fertilized cell develops into a seed. The covering the ovule gives rise to the seed coat. So the seed is inside, the covering, the ovary and all the upper part, gives rise to the covering of the ovule gives rise to the seed coat, and the ovary develops into the fruit containing the seed. So you will be having the ovary which is forming the fruit, the ovule wall will form the seed coat, and the zygote is inside that particular seed which is present. So the ovary remains attached to the stalk of the flower and grows into a fruit. So what is going to happen is this stalk, this ovary is going to retain, everything else is going to get withered off. Right? They are going to get fall off. वो गिर जाएगा, ठीक है? बाकी क्या बचेगा? Only that particular ovary part which is connected to the stalk. And that ovary part, so it is going to be, that ovary remains attached to the stalk of the flower and grows into a fruit. The ovules inside the ovary develop into seeds, and the other parts like the sepals, petals, they are going to fall off. So this is how the fertilization is going to take place. Now after the fertilization is going to take place, so what you are going to get will be a flower, so a fruit, that is the common man fruit is something sweet and fleshy, but for science student, fruit is just a ripened ovary. So normally if you consider as a botanist, then the fruit is nothing but the ripened ovary. That is thus tomato, pea, pumpkin are all fruits, not just vegetables. The term vegetable is not a scientific term, whereas a fruit is scientifically, a vegetable is a vegetative part of the plant. So root, stem, leaf, which can be cooked and eaten. So vegetable is something which is just can be eaten, whether it's a root, stem or leaves. It is not just a fruit. Whereas a fruit is something which is a ripened ovary. So the walls of the ovary may be fleshy as in papaya or tomato, or dry as pea, gram, maize, etc. Thus a fruit may be fleshy fruit or a dry fruit. So accordingly you will be having the fleshy fruit. Now of course dry fruit doesn't mean the dry fruits like kaju and all. They are dried fruits. So whether the dry fruits are not the same. The dry fruits will be the grains. So the grains will be dry fruits. So that is the one which is rice, maize and all are dry fruits. Okay, they do not have a fleshy part of it. That's why they are dry. Apple, strawberry, pear are different kinds of fruits. In these fruits, the base of the flower and not the ovary becomes the main fleshy part of the fruit, which we eat, while the ovary remains the small central part containing seeds, such as the false fruit. So when it is such that the ovary part, so we can see over here that apples, pear and strawberry are fruits which bears the base of the fruits are not the ovary, and not the ovary, the fruit is the main part and not the base of the fruit as the ovary. So the ovary is just the central part. So we can see when we eat the apple, we have the seed which is inside. So that particular shape, what you see in an apple, when you cut an apple, you will find that if you cut an apple like this, you will find that this is the part which is between where the seeds are there. So this particular part, what is that? That was the original ovary of that particular flower. So central part contains the seed, which such fruits are called as false fruits because it is not the ripened ovary. Ovary is here, but it is flashy thing on top of it. So that's why it is called as a false fruit. And of course, what is going to happen further is when you eat these fruits, when you eat, you are going to throw the seeds somewhere in the dustbin. So that dustbin also goes to some places. Or if the fruit is not eaten by anything, then not eaten by anybody, then it is just going to dry off on the plant itself, and then it was going to fall down, and then the seeds which are there, if they get the suitable climatic conditions, then they will grow into a new plant. So this is how the seeds are going to be traveling from the plant to the different places, and the tree then the plant can grow. This is called as seed dispersal. So anyway, I suppose that this particular part of the chapter has been cancelled from the new textbooks. So anyway, you need not go in detail of that, but mainly what is seed dispersal is the separation, or you can say the spreading of the seed away from that particular plant is nothing but the seed dispersal. So method of releasing of the seed from the plant or from the fruit to the different parts is called as seed dispersal, or we can say that it is a method by which we are having biodiversification. That means we are having different areas having different trees. So that is because the seeds are going to disperse from one part to another part, and accordingly there will be growth. So that was about the chapter reproduction in plants. There was a very small part left out, by which I didn't knew that the other part was cancelled. Otherwise, I would have completed in the earlier video all that itself. So that's the end of reproduction in plants.